Chapter 11 Finalizing the Development Direction. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The next day, Wei Lin slept until 3 o'clock in the morning, and after eating the food sent by the servant, he couldn't wait to find Brian and Alec to discuss purchasing supplies. However, before that, Varen asked someone to bring a red phosphorus horse over, intending to give it to Baron Alec as a gift to establish a relationship. It will be much easier to ask for help from others in the future. At this moment, Brian and Alec were sitting opposite each other in the castle study. Alec, what do you think of Varen? I can't tell. I can't tell based on our interactions last night. After hearing this, Alec thought for a few minutes and finally shook his head and said, You can't tell, but my cousin is very good and values family ties, but he's just a little lazy. We haven't seen him for 6 years, and when he came, he gave me a set of excellent night-level full-body armor worth 12,000 gold coins. But I'm troubled. Don't know how to return the favor. At this point, Brian looked at Alec and stared at him piercingly. Okay, it's easy for you to return a gift. I saw that the people he brought did not have protective armor. You can use 100 sets of leather armor as a return gift. Alec covered his forehead and looked at this big fool, not knowing what to say. Is good. Ha ha ha, you are smart. It is indeed a wise choice to ask you to come over and replan the layout of the villages in the territory. Brian laughed loudly and said excitedly. Sir, Lord Varen invites you and Lord Alec to go to the training ground. Suddenly, the butler's voice came from outside the door, causing Brian to stop smiling. Let's go and see, what does Wei Lin want from us? Brian stood up first and walked towards the door. Alec followed closely and headed to the training ground. Based on his judgment, Varen invited him there to give him a gift, and he began to predict in his mind how to return the gift just right. At the training ground, Varen watched the two people arrive and stepped forward and said to Alec, Cousin, what do you think of this horse? It is fat and strong, with a trace of red dragon blood. It has a lot of room for growth. It is worth 20,000 gold coins on the market. Alec gave a fair evaluation based on the horse's appearance. Cousin, you have good vision. This is a gift from my little brother. I hope you like it. Alec replied calmly, Since it is from you, I will accept it. In return, I will give you 60 carts of grain and a batch of iron farm tools, plus a detailed map of the Yellowstone area in the northwest of the Grey Mango Wasteland. When Wei Lin heard this, he was stunned on the spot. How did he know that he had chosen the Yellowstone area in the northwest of the Grey Mist Wasteland as the development direction? He raised his head and met Alec's smiling eyes. He sighed in his heart and said with a smile, Thank you for your help, cousin. At the same time, Brian found the right moment and said with a smile, Wei Lin, I don't have anything good, and my territory only has a lot of iron ore, so I will give you 20 sets of iron armor and 150 sets of leather armor. Plus 100 iron swords as my return gift. I hope you won't dislike it. Thank you, cousin. Not surprisingly, Alec looked at this generous fool again and didn't know what to say. Brian ignored his look and felt happy when he saw his relatives happy. That afternoon, Brian delivered 20 sets of iron armor, 150 sets of leather armor, and 100 iron swords to Wei Lin. In a camp outside the castle, Wei Lin picked up an iron sword, tried it on a wooden stake a few times, and found that the quality was very good. Then I checked the iron armor and leather armor. They were all top-notch among the ordinary grade ones, and there were no shoddy ones. According to the market value of Kadlo Province, these things are worth 15,000 gold coins. In the event of war, it is possible to sell them for 30,000 gold coins. My lord, with this batch of weapons, our initial development operations will be much smoother. Baird, the captain of the night guard, stared at the weapons and said excitedly. Next, the training tasks for these 200 people will be left to you. I hope they will play a more important role in actual combat. Lord, please be at ease. Baird looked excited and left the castle with a few knights, heading to the camp outside the city to gather the serfs and couldn't wait to start training. With nothing to do, Wei Lin returned to his room, opened the map of the Yellowstone area in the northwest of the Grey Mango Wasteland that Alec had given him, carefully observed it, and thought about the best areas to develop. As for the 60 carts of grain and a batch of farm tools promised by Alec, they will be delivered to Brian's castle. Within half a month, Sovereign was prepared to shamelessly eat and drink at Cousin Brian's place. The Yellowstone area in the northwest of the Grey Mango Wasteland has a total area of 600,000 square kilometers, an area the size of 4 Kadlo provinces. There is a main river, the Huangsha River, which flows from southeast to northwest and merges into an unknown distant place. The closer you get to the river, the more fertile the land, and the more monsters there are. Away from the river area, the land is relatively barren, but food can be grown normally, but the yield is not high. When growing wheat, 1 acre of land can produce about 150 kilograms. According to calculations made by Wei Lin in his previous life, an adult would need to consume 400 kilograms of wheat a year if he only ate wheat. However, this is a different world, and most of them are serfs without freedom. As long as they don't starve to death, in theory, only the wheat harvested from 1 acre of land plus wild vegetables and other food is enough to feed a high-quality serf. No, this idea is too evil. I have morals. If I go too far, how can I survive in the family? Wellen shook his head, threw this idea out of his mind, and stopped thinking about this kind of thing. Then, he set his sights on the distribution area of monsters in the Yellowstone area. Still according to the river distribution map, near the main stream of the Yellow Sand River are some relatively powerful monster clans, such as ogres, jackals and minotaurs. The tributaries are occupied by some weak monsters, such as dog-headed men, goblins, and other weak monsters. The good news is that there are almost no powerful monsters in the Yellowstone area. The leader of the most powerful monster clan is at the gold level. As long as he doesn't seek death, he can go directly to the Yellow Sand River Basin to open up the territory without worrying about safety issues. The bad news is that the barren environment has led to an extremely poor magic environment here, and it is very difficult to practice, and magic crystals are needed to assist. Then he looked at the southern part of the Yellowstone area, a place called Toxic, which is 200 kilometers away from here in a straight line, with an area of more than 1,000 square kilometers. There are only monster clans like goblins around, and the most powerful monster is only bronze high level, which is very suitable for him to open up. After deciding on the direction, Wei Lin came to the table, took out a piece of paper, and began to record the assets he currently owned: a wise lord, 2 underage guardian knights, 12 bronze high-level knights, 200 serfs in training, and 55 bandit slaves. 81,200 gold coins, 9 intermediate magic crystals, and 120 low-level magic crystals, 17 red-scaled horses, 5 sets of excellent knight full-body armor, and 6 excellent knight long swords, 20 sets of iron armor, 150 sets of leather armor, 100 iron swords, 60 carts of food that have not yet arrived, and a batch of farm tools. The above is all the property Wei Lin has now. With these things, it is enough to support his initial expenses in developing the territory. Chapter 12, The First Battle of Development, Part 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On May 17, 9720 of the glorious calendar, after receiving 60 carts of food and a batch of farm tools from Alec, Wei Lin led his people away from here and officially began his own pioneering journey. He felt embarrassed to have lived here for half a month. He couldn't wait to say goodbye to his cousin and led his people to leave the Ridge territory and head to the Toxic area. Standing on the castle tower, Brian looked at the group of people leaving inside. Master, when the servant was cleaning Lord Waylin's room, he found 300 gold coins. The castle steward came to Brian and reported to him with his head down. Brian was stunned when he heard this, then smiled bitterly and said, I guess he was afraid that I would not accept it if he gave it to me in person, so he resorted to this desperate measure. Master, what should we do? Take it. Brian looked into the distance, his eyes deep. Next time we trade, remember to remind me not to let my brother suffer a loss. Yes, master. Then, the butler withdrew, and Brian stood alone on the tower, watching Wei Lin leave. After 5 days, they arrived at the edge of Toxic. While Wei Lin ordered people to set up camp, he ordered Baird to arrange people to scout the surrounding situation. Their arrival also attracted the attention of a relatively powerful goblin tribe around. 2 days later, in a tent, Wei Lin summoned all 12 knights under his command to hold a simple military meeting. due to the simple facilities, everyone sat cross-legged on the ground. Everyone, after 2 days of investigation, the general situation around is as shown in the map. Tell us what you think. In the middle of the crowd, there was a temporary wooden table made of several wooden boxes, on which was placed a simple map covering the basic situation of the surrounding hundreds of square kilometers. On the map, there were goblin tribes of all sizes, roughly counting no less than 20, the largest one had more than 300 goblins, and the smaller ones also had dozens, totaling more than 2,000 goblins. My lord, I think we should concentrate our efforts to defeat the most powerful tribe. In this way, even if the remaining goblins sense the crisis and unite, they will not pose a threat to us, and there may be internal strife. Baird, the captain of the Night Guard, pointed to the largest tribe on the map and put forward his opinion. Well, that makes sense. The goblin race is greedy and mean, especially bullying the weak and fearing the strong. If we defeat the strongest among them, even if the other tribes unite, they will fall into internal strife because they do not have a strong leader, and we will defeat them one by one. Wei Lin nodded after hearing this, and then looked at the others, wanting to get more different opinions, but he still overestimated the IQ of this group of people. He saw the other 11 people looking left and right, and then looking at Wei Lin in unison, with clear eyes revealing stupidity. Sure enough, among these 12 people, only Baird is suitable to be the commander, and the others are at best a general. But he was also satisfied, as the saying goes, it is easy to get 3 armies, but it is difficult to get a general, and it is even more difficult to get a commander. This theorem also applies to the other world known for its strength. Of course, a strong enough force is enough to crush all the tricks and strategies. If Wei Lin had thousands of bronze knights, he would just push forward and kill all the goblins on this land and easily occupy this place. Why would he discuss countermeasures here? After waiting for a few minutes, no one spoke. Wei Lin looked around disappointedly and said, "This time, we will adopt Baird's proposal, go down and prepare, and start the action tomorrow." "Yes, my lord." Everyone answered loudly, then left the tent and returned to their own tents to prepare. Orlando and Hebrew, who were guards outside the tent, saw everyone leave, lifted the curtain and entered the tent. "Lord, what's bothering you?" Orlando saw Wei Lin's decadent look and stepped forward to greet him. "Nothing, just a little depressed." "Why are there so few smart people under my command?" Seeing this, Hebrew asked curiously, "Lord, are those knights stupid?" "Shut up, Hebrew." Orlando scolded in a low voice, turned to Wei Lin and apologized, "Lord, my brother is outspoken, I hope you will forgive me." "Nothing, it's okay to say these words in front of me, but don't say such things in public." "Yes, Lord." Hebrew realized the problem and quickly replied. "Okay, you two go out and prepare. This time, you will also go on the field to experience the encirclement and suppression of the goblin tribe. It will not be good for your growth if you only practice without actual combat." "Yes, Lord." Orlando and Hebrew said goodbye to Wei Lin and then left the tent. As soon as he returned to his tent, Orlando pulled his brother to a corner and scolded him with a stern face. "Hebrew, what are the 6 words I told you?" Looking at his brother's expression, Hebrew's eyes were evasive, and he stammered, "Less talk, more work." "So what did you do today?" "Brother, Hebrew said with his head down. Alas, Orlando looked at his brother and said helplessly, "There must not be a next time. The Lord treats us as relatives, but others may not. You must remember these 6 words." "Yes." Hebrew nodded heavily and followed his elder brother to prepare for tomorrow's battle. Since the awakening of fighting spirit, the two have practiced for less than a month and a half, and now they are bronze intermediate knights. The speed of progress is beyond the reach of Wei Lin. According to his estimation, in a year at most, his 2 underage guardian knights will become silver knights. However, with the oath of the guardian knights and the witness of the goddess of life, he is not afraid of the 2 guardian knights rebelling. Besides, Orlando and Hebrew have no reason to rebel against him. In a luxurious cave in the Stone Tribe, a goblin leader holding a staff looked panicked after listening to the intelligence of the goblin scouts. "You can see clearly, there are hundreds of them." "Elder, there are really hundreds of humans in that group, and everyone has weapons. I am willing to guarantee it with my life. What should I do? The goblin leader walked back and forth, thinking about countermeasures. Is he going to run away again? More than 30 years ago, his tribe encountered human pioneers and migrated for the first time. More than 10 years ago, he encountered human pioneers again and migrated again. Now, he has come to this place and met human pioneers. Great Goblin God, please guide your humble believers. The goblin leader knelt down before the statue and prayed, but the ugly statue did not respond at all. Helplessly, the goblin leader of the stone tribe stood up with a fierce look on his face, ready to save himself, not for his people, but also for the salt mine that he had finally discovered. Then he shouted, "Go and invite the leaders of several surrounding tribes. I want to discuss important matters with them and defend our territory." "Yes, leader." Several goblin warriors around the cave responded and left. Chapter 13, The First Battle of the Exploration. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The next morning, except for the 20 armed serfs who stayed behind to watch the camp, the whole camp went out in full force: 13 bronze knights, 2 trainee knights, 180 armed serfs, 55 cannon fodder slaves, a total of 250 combatants. The marching team of more than 300 meters marched towards the goblin tribe 25 kilometers away. In the team, every armed serf was not panicked, but excited, and couldn't wait to fight the goblins. The reason was that Wei Lin promised them that if they took the heads of 3 goblins, he would publicly pardon their serf status and become a freeman. On this basis, he would reward them with a silver coin for each additional goblin killed. Freedom and private property, these were things they dared not even think about as serfs. As long as they risked their lives, their children, grandchildren, and descendants would all be freemen. On the red phosphorus horse, Wei Lin observed the surrounding environment while looking at these armed serfs who were full of hope for the future. He was very satisfied. If nothing unexpected happened, this operation would go smoothly. He was still clear about who was stronger and who was weaker between a group of zombie-like cannon fodder and a group of serfs full of fighting spirit. Wei Lin, who had the memory of 2 lives, had a clear plan for his future territory. This method can be used not only in war, but also in other aspects, just like the farming and warfare system of the Qin state, but some changes need to be made, otherwise it will be rejected by the mainstream of this world. After 4 hours of marching, Wei Lin ordered to stop advancing and rest in the woods. At the same time, the 4 knights who served as scouts drove their horses away from here to conduct a reconnaissance of the giant stone tribe in front to ensure that no unexpected situation occurred. Under a big tree, Wei Lin took the food handed over by Orlando, a kind of pancake baked with flour, mixed with cold boiled water, to fill his stomach. "Orlando, Hebrew, you two will attack last later, don't rush in rashly." Wiping his mouth, Wei Lin stared at his 2 guardian knights and said seriously, "Yes, my lord." The 2 answered in unison. Compared with the increasingly mature Orlando, Hebrew seemed a little timid and had no confidence in the next battle. Wei Lin looked at his helpless look, shook his head and smiled. As long as he experienced a few battles, it would be fine. "My lord, the scouts are back." Baird came over and reported to Wei Lin. According to the investigation of Otto and his team, the number of goblins in the stone tribe has increased a lot. Hearing this, Wei Lin asked Baird, "How much has it increased?" "About 100. 100, so the number of goblins in the stone tribe has reached 400. After hearing this, Baird nodded and looked at Wei Lin, waiting for his decision. "Keep the original plan unchanged. I will lead the knights to charge, disrupt their formation, and kill the enemy's leader. You command the infantry and drive the cannon fodder slaves to launch the first wave of attack, and the armed serfs will follow closely." Wei Lin thought for a while and said to Baird, "Defeat them in one go." "I understand, my lord." After Baird left, Wei Lin leaned against the tree trunk, gathering his strength and preparing for the battle. On the other side, in the luxurious cave of the stone tribe, the leader of the stone tribe, Jerry, was having a heated discussion with the other 6 goblin tribe leaders. In order to entertain these people, the leader of the stone tribe, Jerry, even took out the fruit wine that he had collected for a long time. Seeing these country bumpkins drinking, his heart was bleeding, but he had to pretend to be generous. The traces of human pioneers appear again. Under the gaze of the goblin god, offer these human hearts to him. The goblin leader who was sitting below with only one ear was stunned on the spot. The wine glass he raised high stopped in the air, and he said in astonishment, "What, there are human pioneers again. God! Why don't you favor the goblin?" "No, I have to go back and move away quickly." For a while, the 6 goblin leaders who came to the banquet were in a mess, and they hurriedly discussed how to escape. As for confronting human pioneers, don't joke. If they had the courage to resist, they would not run to this ghost place. "Silence, under the gaze of the gods, don't you have any shame?" The leader of the stone tribe, Jerry, jumped up angrily and shouted at this group of people. "Shame, what is that? The most important thing is to stay alive." A goblin said nonchalantly. "That's right, the goblin god taught us that staying alive and reproducing the race is the most important thing. If it weren't for humans not wanting goblin slaves, I wouldn't want to run away." There was even a winner. An old goblin leader sitting in the back stood up with his staff and spoke shamelessly, looking at this group of scum. The leader of the stone tribe was so angry that he was fuming, and the female goblin serving next to him was trembling with fear. Just as he was about to summon the goblin warriors of the tribe to teach these bastards a lesson, a goblin rushed into the cave and reported in a panic, "Chief, a large number of humans appeared outside and are approaching us. The distance is less than 600 meters. What? How come they are coming so fast?" The face of the leader of the stone tribe changed drastically, and he ordered loudly, "Quick, gather all the tribesmen of the tribe, prepare for battle immediately, and destroy this group of humans under the witness of the great goblin god." As expected, under the strong pressure of hundreds of goblin warriors from the stone tribe, the 6 invited goblin leaders and their guards were escorted to the front line to serve as cannon fodder and consume the number of humans. "Stop moving forward." Baird, who was in charge of commanding the armed serfs and slave cannon fodder, ordered loudly, and the team of more than 200 people stopped and confronted the green monster 300 meters away. Compared with the neat armed serfs, the 55 cannon fodder slaves seemed flustered. Emotions such as panic, timidity, and fear changed dramatically on their faces. "Baird, the infantry phalanx is left to you." "Yes, my lord." Weylin drove his horse forward, ready to lead the remaining 11 bronze high-level knights to make the first round of charge and disrupt the opponent's formation. First battle, must win. In front of the battle, Weylin put down his armor, holding a lance, and his eyes became sharp. The 11 members of the night guard behind him did the same, waiting for his order. Charge. The order was given, and the 12 red phosphorus horses ran. Seeing the 12 steel beasts rushing over, the goblin warriors of other tribes and the old, weak and sick of the stone tribe at the front panicked, and were blocked by the spears of the goblins behind, unable to move forward or backward. Throw stones. The leader of the stone tribe was very panicked when he saw this, and shouted loudly. The 20 goblin warriors who served as stone throwers used all their strength to throw the stones in their hands. Faced with the flying boulders, Weylin and others did not dodge. With the protection of the full body armor, they could not cause much damage to them. Chapter 14, The First Battle of Development Part 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Looking at the goblins approaching, Weylin could clearly see their fear. He held the lance tightly and made the first round of contact. In an instant, the bodies of the goblin warriors in front were torn apart, and several were pierced by the lances. With this force, Weylin rushed for more than 20 meters, and then he gave up the lance in his hand, drew out the knight's sword, and began to slash, leaving the goblin formation and heading towards the conspicuous wooden command platform. Normally, the infantry should try their best to limit the knight's activity space and create opportunities for others, but Weylin's 12 people easily killed through the goblin formation and went straight to the command platform where the giant stone goblin leader was in the back. Baird, who was in charge of commanding the infantry, saw this and ordered the slave cannon fodder to attack. When the slave cannon fodder came into contact with the goblins, Baird once again ordered the armed serfs to charge. At the same time, Orlando and Hebrew, wearing leather armor and drawing Knight daggers followed the armed serfs to fight the first battle of their lives. The goblin leader who was in charge of commanding on the high platform in the back saw the human knight approaching, and hurriedly ordered the goblin warriors guarding him to meet the enemy. At the same time, he mobilized the magic power in his body, activated the staff, and launched magic attacks, ready to show these humans a little color. Wei Lin stepped forward and killed several goblin warriors in a row, jumped off the horse's back, jumped onto the wooden command platform, and cut the two strong goblin warriors in front of him in half with a sword. Jerry, the leader of the stone tribe, saw that the last barrier was gone, and his legs were weak with fear. The spellcasting process was interrupted, and he suffered a backlash, vomited green blood, and fell to the ground powerlessly. Looking up at the sky, he wished that the decision he made a day ago was to migrate instead of fighting with this group of humans. Wei Lin pierced the heart of Jerry, the leader of the stone tribe, with a sword, raised his body high, and threw it hard at the goblin phalanx. In an instant, the goblins saw the body of their leader and fled in all directions. Baird saw this and told the armed serfs to act on their own. Whether they could get rid of their serf status depended on themselves. Then he drove his horse towards Wei Lin. Wei Lin took off his helmet and sat on the high platform, watching the final battlefield, and looked at Orlando and Hebrew with interest. The two of them gradually adapted from the initial panic to the final handiness, and grew very quickly, especially Orlando. Wei Lin seemed to see the rise of a genius, and this was his own genius. My lord Baird, this group of goblins is weaker than expected. I think we will soon get this land and get our first pioneer territory. Seeing Baird coming, Wei Lin jumped off the 4-meter-high command platform, landed accurately on the horse's back, and said to him, "Not only that, we can also select some of the best performers from this group of armed serfs to form the first army belonging to the territory. Well, I will let Orlando assist you. As for the army, he needs to intervene and cannot leave everything to Baird, so, he set his sights on his guardian knight Orlando, intending to use him as the core to cultivate a force for the balance of the army." At this moment, a knight ran over and said excitedly, "Master, Captain, the extra goblins here are warriors from the 6 surrounding tribes. Roughly the situation is like this. So, the 6 surrounding goblin tribes are now in a state of being leaderless." Wei Lin smiled, not expecting the surprise to come so suddenly. "Master, why not take this opportunity to attack these 6 goblin tribes?" Baird reacted and actively advised. After hearing Baird's proposal, Wei Lin thought for a while and gave the order, "Leave 30 armed serfs to clean up the battlefield. The remaining 11 knights plus Orlando will form a team of 4, each leading 5 teams of armed serfs to select 2 goblin tribes. I hope to hear good news from them tomorrow morning." "Yes, my lord." The knight took the order and went down to convey Wei Lin's order. Baird, next, let the remaining people set up camp first. We still need to spend the night here. I understand, my lord. After Baird beat his chest and saluted, he left here. He needed to count casualties, count finances, and plan the camp. On the other side, after receiving Wei Lin's order, the 11 knights and the guardian knight Orlando each divided into teams, agreed on the target, and set off with their troops without delaying for a moment. At night, in the luxurious cave of the stone tribe, Wei Lin, Baird and Hebrew walked by the fire, eating barbecue and summarizing the battle. "My lord, in this battle, we lost 12 slave cannon fodders, 8 of whom died on the spot. The remaining 4 had their hands and feet broken and were of no use. I have ordered them to be executed." "Well done. There is no need to be lenient with these bandit slaves. If they are of no use, they should be killed to avoid wasting food." Wei Lin nodded in agreement after hearing Baird's solution. Seeing this, Baird continued, "In this battle, a total of 321 goblins were killed, 142 gold coins, 382 silver coins, more than 1,500 copper coins, more than 5,300 kilograms of grain, more than 1,100 kilograms of dried meat, and 600 kilograms of salt mines." "Salt, wait a minute." Wei Lin reacted and waved to interrupt Baird's report. 600 kilograms of salt, so much, is there a salt mine nearby? Baird shook his head and said, "My lord, I don't know. Maybe it's nearby." Send someone to search tomorrow and we should be able to find it. Remember this. If we find the salt mine, I'll be rich. Baird looked at Wei Lin, who was grinning, and was very curious. Salt mines contain harmful substances and are cheap. They are only worth 8 copper coins per kilogram on the market. Then, he continued to report the seized materials. 30 inferior iron swords, 60 spears, 15 sets of leather armor, 20 pieces of leather from unknown creatures, 2 tons of iron ore, 6 low-level magic crystals, 30 kilograms of fruit wine, and 3 ordinary level staffs. In total, it is worth about 821 gold coins. In this world, 1 gold coin is equal to 10 silver coins, and 1 silver coin can be exchanged for 100 copper coins. The spoils of this battle are not small. However, the giant stone tribe is the most powerful tribe in this 100 square kilometers. It is still unknown whether the property of other goblin tribes combined is so much. My lord, we are still counting the number of goblins killed by serfs. It will take some time. Afterwards, Wei Lin and Baird began to summarize and review this battle. The Hebrew guardian knight sat quietly aside to study and act as a recorder. Chapter 15 Pardoning Serfs. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A few kilometers away from the Boulder tribe, there is a small goblin tribe. The goblin warrior standing at the wooden gate looks into the distance, waiting for the return of his leader. Suddenly, there was a ripple in the distance. 2 goblin warriors thought it was the leader returning and hurried forward to greet him. Puff, that while Orlando was riding, he killed the goblin warriors that appeared, without losing any speed, and continued to move forward on the red phosphorus horse. The armed serfs following him stepped on the corpses of the goblin warriors and moved towards the goblin tribe. Subsequently, the tribe where more than 100 goblins lived was razed to the ground, and fire ravaged the surrounding thatched houses. My lord, there is no one left alive. A serf came forward to report. Can you check carefully? Orlando asked the serf with a serious expression on his young face. It's absolutely true, even the little cub was killed by us. Clean the battlefield, gather all the supplies, and we will return to the stone tribe overnight. Yes, sir. Orlando sat on his horse, looking at the busy serfs around him, and began to think about the gains and losses of this action. When he attacked the first goblin tribe more than 3 hours ago, he watched from behind the 3 knights and learned their fighting methods, but this time, he led 50 serfs to fight alone. Using night raids, he broke into the opponent's tribe with lightning speed before the opponent could react. He knew that he was able to independently lead the troops to attack this small tribe, and the 3 knights volunteered to hold the formation on the outside in case of unexpected events. Thanks to his status as a guardian knight, without the protection of his lord, he would be an ordinary slave, and it would be impossible for him to gain the respect of the superior knight. One day, I will rely on my own efforts to make the Lord proud of me. Orlando clenched his fists and made a decision in his mind. The next morning, Varen woke up from the cave, looked at the sunlight coming in, and realized that it was getting late. Outside the cave, 14 knights were sitting on the ground. They all knew the Lord's habits, so they did not disturb his sleep, but whispered about last night's battle outside the cave. Varen put on his clothes and walked out of the cave. At first sight, he saw Orlando chatting happily with several knights, and he couldn't help but smile with relief. Good morning, Lord. When everyone saw Wei Lin, they all stood up and saluted. Sit down, everyone, sit down, it's a rare good day today. Wei Lin motioned for everyone to sit down, and he followed suit and said with a smile, it seems that your actions yesterday went smoothly, so I feel relieved. Seeing this, Baird took out a piece of paper with names written on it and handed it to him. My lord, this is the number of goblins killed by serfs. 79 people met the conditions to become free people, and 25 people killed more than 3 people. 1 person killed 8 goblins, the most among all the serfs. Oh, call me up and take a look. A knight stood up and turned around to bring the serf over. What are the serf casualties? Varen put the yellowed paper on his knees and asked Baird. After hearing this, Baird immediately replied, returning to the Lord, 7 people were killed and 11 were injured. It's okay. It exceeded expectations. After all, they are just a group of serfs. Although they have trained for more than a month, they can't have too high expectations. After hearing this, Wei Lin gave a fair evaluation. At this time, the leaving knight returned outside the cave with a young serf. "My lord, this is the serf who killed 8 goblin warriors." The knight reported with his hands in hand and sat down immediately. "What's your name?" There were many serfs in Wei Lin. He had thick black hair, dark skin, and a regular appearance. Among the serfs who worked all year round, his appearance was considered to be of the highest quality. "Master, the slave's name is Kyle." The serf knelt on the ground and spoke back to Varen in a trembling tone. "Kyle, as the warrior with the largest number of enemy kills among the serfs, I give you 2 choices." Varen raised 2 fingers and said to the serf with a smile. "Master, please tell me, clearly. First, I will order someone to teach you a knight's awakening method. As long as you awaken your fighting spirit within half a month, I will accept you as a knight's attendant. Second, following my previous promise, I pardoned your status as a serf and rewarded you with 5 silver coins and 3 more silver coins as an incentive." After hearing this, Kyle crawled on the ground with a struggling expression on his face. The surrounding knights all looked at the serf, curious to know what his choice was. Orlando, who was sitting aside, looked at Kyle and seemed to see his past self. If it hadn't been for his master, he wouldn't be able to pinpoint where he would be living a life worse than a pig or a dog. Master, I choose the first one." "Wise choice." Varen pointed at Kyle and turned to Orlando. "I'll leave him to you." "Yes, Lord." Orlando stood up and accepted the task. Although he was a little confused as to why the Lord chose him instead of the experienced knights around him, since it was a task given to him by the Lord, he must accept it unconditionally. "Okay, gather the remaining serfs." Wei Lin stood up, patted the dust on his butt, and gave instructions to the others. After a while, all 173 serfs were summoned. In front of the phalanx, a wooden box was opened, and the silver coins inside shone, attracting the attention of all the serfs present. "I promise you that if you take the heads of 3 goblins, you will be pardoned as a serf. On this basis, you will be rewarded with a silver coin for each additional goblin killed. Today is the time to fulfill your promise. In this battle, 79 people will be pardoned. They are lucky, but also brave." Then, Wei Lin took out the list and announced loudly. Every serf whose name was mentioned burst into tears and knelt on the ground to thank the master for the pardon. 24 of them will be rewarded with silver coins. The serfs present were very envious as they watched their companions come forward to receive the silver coins from the master. The next battle will continue. Whether you can get rid of the status of serfs depends on you. After the pardon ceremony, Wei Lin gave a short speech to the remaining serfs to inspire them. Immediately, Baird took over the command, dispersed the serfs, searched around, and looked for traces of the salt mine. He promised that whoever found the salt mine would be given the head of a goblin warrior. This statement greatly aroused the enthusiasm of the serfs, who could not wait to follow their captain to search around the stone tribe. On the other hand, Wei Lin took out the map and began to think about building his own village in this place of more than 100 square kilometers and creating his first territory. Chapter 16 The First Mine, Salt Mine. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The first choice is to be close to the water source, which is convenient for water irrigation. The surrounding land is also conducive to development under the nourishment of the stream. Looking at this palm-sized place, Wei Lin has only 3 places to choose. One of them is just 7 kilometers north of the giant stone tribe. There is a pool formed by the confluence of streams, covering an area of more than 1,500 acres, which is equivalent to about 1 square kilometer, enough for the initial water consumption. The other 2 places are not as geographically superior as this one. This is the place. Take people to explore and select a site in the afternoon. As for the surrounding goblin tribe, it is no longer a threat. Maybe these green monsters have already started to migrate. Near noon, a knight came to report that a salt mine was discovered. After lunch, Wei Lin took several knights to the location of the salt mine. On a low hill, several serfs guarded the entrance of the cave, chewing on the black bread in their hands and discussing excitedly. Yesterday on the battlefield, I killed 2 goblins. With the discovery of this salt mine, I will definitely be able to get rid of my serf status and become a free man. Alas, I am not so lucky. Including the credit for discovering the salt mine, there are only 2. I don't know when the next battle will be. Don't be discouraged. Master, you must fight a lot to expand your territory. Maybe tomorrow I can follow the knights to wipe out the surrounding goblin tribes. I hope so. When I get rid of my serf status, I must. Look, it's the master. A serf soldier said loudly when he saw a figure appearing in the distance. When Wei Lin approached, a serf came forward to hold the red phosphorus horse, and the other 2 immediately reported, "Master, this is the salt mine, there is no danger inside." Good job, keep working hard. Wei Lin turned over and got off the horse, encouraged the 3 serfs, and then took Baird into the cave. After walking more than 100 meters, a cave of more than 100 square meters appeared in front of them, and the surrounding walls were all made of salt mines. He walked forward and used his fighting spirit to detect. Within his perception range, there were all salt mines, and they were all very pure salt mines. They only needed to be purified roughly before they could be sold as medium-quality salt. As for the mineral salt with more harmful impurities on the surface, only a small part of it was sold. The reserves of this salt mine are not small, which is a pleasant surprise. Baird was a little skeptical and also conducted exploration. His face suddenly changed and he hurriedly said, "My lord, this is a treasure land. It must be strictly guarded. I suggest that all miners use those evil robbers and slaves, and station troops on the periphery for defense. It's just what I want, but in the early stage, it is not suitable to mine in large quantities, so as not to be discovered and cause trouble for no reason." Wei Lin touched his chin and said to Baird, "My lord is right." Soon, the 2 left the cave, found a huge stone, sealed the entrance first, and waited for the successful establishment of the settlement before sending people to mine. While there was still time, Wei Lin took Baird and his men to explore the pond 12 kilometers away, preparing to finalize the location of the initial settlement. 10 minutes later, they came to a wide lake, and there were some animals drinking water not far away. Looking at the beautiful scenery, the people who came here relaxed physically and mentally. "Baird, it's a beautiful place, isn't it?" Wei Lin turned his head and looked at Baird, whose face didn't change much, and smiled from the heart. "My lord, it's very beautiful, the land is fertile, and it's good for irrigation. There is also a slope in the distance, which is easy to defend and difficult to attack, and a castle can be built. This place is also close to the salt mine, and support can be provided at any time. Maybe you don't mean what I said, but it doesn't matter." Wei Lin shrugged and said helplessly, "Let's go around. This may be our future home for quite a long time." Wei Lin said to the knights behind him, and then rode his horse to the slope in the distance. Seeing this, Baird led his men to follow him quietly. It took more than 2 hours for Wei Lin to walk around the lake and write down some rough ideas on paper, such as which place is suitable for building a castle, which place is suitable for cultivating farmland, which place can be used as a military camp, or as a place to store excrement to avoid polluting the quality of the lake water. Although the water in the lake here is flowing and has the effect of self-evolution, Wei Lin does not want to drink lake water with excrement. Seeing that it was getting late, Wei Lin ended this exploration trip and took people back to the Stone Tribe to prepare for the final preparations before the development. The news of the destruction of the Stone Tribe and the 6 surrounding tribes spread with the surviving goblins. As Wei Lin expected, the first thing the remaining goblin tribe leaders did when they received the news was not to resist, but to prepare to migrate, leave here, and go further west. For more than 100 years, they have come this way, and now they are just repeating what happened before. They would rather compete with jackals and dog-headed people for survival than fight against human pioneers. Fighting against other alien races, if they failed, they could become slaves and survive. Fighting against human pioneers, if they failed, they would be exterminated. There were too many such examples in the past 100 years, so that the goblins in the Grey Wasteland had such memories engraved in their bones. In the next few days, migrating goblins could be seen everywhere on the edge of toxic. Thousands of green-skinned monsters hid during the day and came out at night. leaving this barren land where they had lived for more than 30 years. Some goblin tribes in other regions received news of the reappearance of human pioneers, and they were ready to move their families and leave here. They were not sure whether this was a signal of another large-scale human development, so it was better to leave as soon as possible. In this way, Wei Lin, relying on his own strength, forced hundreds of goblin tribes and tens of thousands of goblins in the marginal areas of the Yellowstone region to migrate. This move was a feast for the monster tribes in the depths, and they could harvest a large number of slave tribes from it to increase the combat effectiveness and reserve food for their own tribes. However, all this had nothing to do with Wei Lin. What he had to do now was to build the first village, the first farmland, the first castle, expand his territory, complete the assessment in 4 years, be promoted to baron, and become a true noble in this world. After returning to the giant stone tribe, after everyone's discussion, it was mainly Wei Lin's narration, others nodded, and occasionally Baird put forward his own views, lying on the carpet. Looking at the planned construction drawings, I felt tired. This meeting made Wei Lin more eager to get a domestic talent. A group of knights whose heads were all muscle made him feel like Alexander. Chapter 17, Building Territory, Qixing Lake. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On May 27, 9720 in the glorious calendar, the camp was moved more than 10 kilometers away, and Varen began construction work. The lake in the center of the initial territory was named Lake of Praying Stars for Wei Lin, which means the light of hope. With the river as the boundary, 9,000 acres of land will be reclaimed on both the north and south sides of the Lake of Prayer for the Stars. It is planned to plant rice near the lake and wheat a little further away, taking into account the dry and wet periods of the lake. Farmland was specifically chosen to be reclaimed 600 meters away from the water's edge. In addition, around the farmland as the core, there are villages on the north and south sides. Due to the current shortage of manpower, Wei Lin planned to focus on the construction of the south side of the Lake of Prayer for Stars, and only consider the north side after sufficient manpower was available. He also planned his castle early and established it in a place in the northeast of Qixing Lake that was easy to defend but difficult to attack. There are not enough manpower in the early stage, so these things are put aside for the time being, and it will not be too late to consider them after the village construction is completed. Looking at the sun in the sky, Wei Lin wore a shirt and observed the development process of the serfs. He also conducted real-time inspections, checked for omissions, filled in the gaps, and modified the plan he had made. He is the only one in the entire team who can do this. If he doesn't do it, who will do it? It should be in the normal water season now. In the high water season, the river will rise by about 1 meter and spread to the river for 300 meters. Then there will be a 300-meter wide usable area between the farmland and the Lake of Prayer for Stars in the high water season. Wei Lin stepped on the river beach and looked at this area, thinking that he could build several fish ponds and breed some fish. Baird, who was accompanying him, looked at the fish pond planned by Wei Lin on the paper and asked curiously, "My lord, why are we building a fish pond here? Those fish cannot bring us enough economic value. For food, this area is constructed to lead a tributary from the upper reaches of the river to surround this 300-meter area, and the other end is connected to the lower reaches to form living water. In this way, the fish we raise will provide more abundant food." Wei Lin pointed with a pencil in the upstream direction and drew a river channel 200 meters wide and 3 meters deep on the drawing, with a total length of about 3.5 kilometers. "But, Lord, we lack manpower." Baird thought about it and said bluntly, "Then let the knights start digging. It will be a good opportunity to exercise their strength. In this place with few extraordinary resources, you can only rely on your own efforts." Baird looked at Wei Lin's eyes and closed his mouth. If he dares to suggest it again, the Lord will promise to have someone bring a shovel and let him start digging the river on the spot. This kind of matter is left to his subordinates. He also has to train 30 professional soldiers, trying to make these talented and strong free people awaken their fighting spirit and become trainee warriors to serve as the new force of the territory. Compared with the difficulty of the Knight Awakening method, the Warrior Awakening method is much simpler. However, correspondingly, a Bronze Knight can fight against 3 warriors of the same level without falling behind. But after the extraordinary level reaches a certain height, the gap between the two will become smaller and smaller, and they will become evenly matched by the legendary stage. Wei Lin looked at the sensible Baird and nodded with satisfaction. He hated others making excuses. If he couldn't beat him, he would really want to give him a good beating. In the next 5 days, Baird actively participated in the training of 30 professional soldiers. The other 11 knights of the Night Guard were forced to carry shovels and began to dig the river channel, which was called training. Orlando and Hebrews took Kyle, a serf, and taught him the Night Awakening method and told him some experiences while immersing themselves in training to become the guardian knight that the Lord needs. Rather than being guarded, there were more than 40 freedmen and more than 100 serfs left, plus 43 robber slaves to cultivate farmland. Even Wei Lin is actively training, on the one hand for his own dignity as a lord, and on the other hand to better protect his hard-won territory. On the morning of June 1st, everyone gathered together in a room made of wood to hold a simple meeting. Your Majesty. Baird, who was sitting first to the left of Wei Lin, stood up and began to report. 13 of the 30 soldiers have awakened fighting spirit and become trainee low-level warriors, and the remaining 17 everyone touches the threshold. In terms of farmland, 2,750 acres of wasteland have been reclaimed. We are still 2,250 acres short of the first phase of the reclamation plan you set. After hearing this, Wei Lin nodded, satisfied with the progress of the task, and motioned for Baird to sit down. From the very beginning, Varen made a simple plan based on the existing population. According to his plan, a freeman or serf would have 20 acres of land. Different from serfs, freedmen have 10 acres of private land and can freely decide the crops to grow. The other 10 acres of land are tax fields and they need to grow officially designated crops. All harvests in the fields are turned over as taxes and must reach a certain level. The excess will belong to themselves, and the lack will be made up by the free people to ensure that they will not cheat. The serfs only had 4 acres of private land, and they could barely eat enough from the food they grew. The other 16 acres were tax land, and the standards were the same as those of free people. Wei Lin also made detailed plans for the soldiers' pay. A soldier's pay consists of 3 parts. First, the grain harvested from 2 acres of tax land. Second, 3 silver coins per month. Third, kill enemies in battle to get rewards. The last article was also valid for the serfs who joined during the war. Then, a dark-skinned knight sitting in the first position on Wei Lin's right stood up and reported, "My lord, the river channel around Qixing Lake has been excavated for 800 meters, and there are still 2,700 meters of work to be done. Well, you are worthy of being my knight. Keep up the good work. After the river channel is completed, we can start the second phase of the construction plan." Wei Lin smiled excitedly. The other 11 knights present looked at the lord with a wry smile. However, they did not feel dissatisfied or resentful. It was really too much given by the lord. 6 low-level magic crystals were enough for them to practice for 3 years. Just to dig this 3,400-meter river channel, what else could they complain about? My lord, we currently have 6 carts of food and 56 mule carts of food, totaling 85,200 kilograms of food. If we consume 530 kilograms a day, we can still support 160 days, which is enough for us to harvest the food. After listening to Orlando's report, Wei Lin began to summarize. In another half-month, we will be able to start the second batch of construction plans. By the end of the year, we will build 2 villages, reclaim 18,000 acres of farmland, and drive out the goblins within a 30-kilometer radius centered on the Qixing Lake, with a population of 1,200 people. This will be our future home. I hope you will do your best to build our territory. Yes, my lord. Then, the meeting was dissolved, and those who dug canals, and those who trained soldiers, each doing their own job. Chapter 18 New Crisis, Breakthrough and Land Division. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At night, Wei Lin stood in front of the window of a wooden house, looking at the night view of the Praying Star Lake, and his body and mind were relaxed. At 8 o'clock, the guidance of fate started again, bringing valuable news to Wei Lin. 3 months later, 3,000 kilometers west of the Praying Star Lake, 2 red dragons and a golden dragon fought a war, and the monsters rioted. They will hit the northwest province of the Kingdom of Ilia in 6 months. The monsters coming to the Praying Star Lake are mostly jackals, and the strongest is the low-level silver. 6 months later, a crisis will come. Hearing this news, Wei Lin was like being struck by thunder. He ran to this place just for safety, but why can't he get rid of these things? Now there are two ways in front of him. First, stop the development of the Praying Star Lake and find a safe place to avoid the edge temporarily, but this will waste a year. Second, continue to develop. Within 6 months, as long as one person breaks through to the low-level silver, he will be able to defend the territory of the Praying Star Lake. Walking back and forth in the room, Wei Lin suddenly stopped, his eyes sharp, looking through the window into the depths of the wilderness. It's so hard to get a start, how can I give up? It's just a group of jackals. I don't believe I can't defend the Lake of Praying Stars. However, in order to strengthen the defense of the territory, he had to buy slaves and compete for strength. In addition, blacksmiths, carpenters and masons, as well as urgently needed architects, must also be bought back, and strive to build a castle that is easy to defend and difficult to attack within 6 months. The next morning, Wei Lin practiced in the open space in front of the wooden house as usual. Suddenly, a special critical point was reached. Then, Wei Lin suddenly opened his eyes and smiled, finally broke through. It's worth my diligent training for more than a month. From the bronze intermediate level to the bronze high level, the fighting spirit in the body increased by 1 section. In addition, the wood attribute fighting spirit has strong recovery and endurance, which means that his own confidence has increased a few points. At this time, Orlando and Hebrew came over with a young man. My lord, I am here to hand in the task. After hearing this, Wei Lin stood up and looked at Kyle behind Orlando and nodded. Not bad, awakening the fighting spirit in half a month and becoming a knight squire. You have good talent. Kyle knelt on the ground and said respectfully, Thank you for giving Kyle the opportunity, master. I am willing to swear with my life that I will always be loyal to you and never betray you. After hearing this, Wei Lin handed the sword to Orlando, helped Kyle up, and said with relief, You have fought for all this. I said that if you awaken the fighting spirit within half a month, I will accept you as my knight squire. From now on, you and Orlando can call me Lord. Thank you, Lord. Kyle saluted Wei Lin respectfully with excitement and reverence in his eyes. Orlando. Lord. Kyle's fighting spirit attribute is fire, and further teaching of him is left to you. I will obey your orders. Wei Lin looked at the gradually mature Orlando, patted his shoulder, reached into his pocket, took out 7 intermediate magic crystals from the space ring, and handed them to him. Lord, what is this? Orlando looked at the 7 intermediate magic crystals in his hand. Staring at the boss, he saw with his own eyes that the other 11 knights were willing to do the work of digging the river for a low-level magic crystal, working hard and without complaint. I said, become my guardian knight, I will focus on training you too. 4 of them are rewards for you 2 brothers, and the other 3 are used as training resources for you 3. The danger is coming, you must speed up to improve your strength. Yes, Lord. The 3 answered in unison. 2 days later, the first phase of the farmland reclamation plan. The next step is the process of dividing the field. In an open space, 39 freemen, 124 serfs and 42 cannon fodder slaves all arrived, looking at the figures divided into squares on the wooden board. Except for the robber slaves, everyone else's eyes were full of expectations. 5,000 acres of land, according to 20 acres per square, were divided into 250 squares by Wei Lin. After your efforts, we completed the reclamation task in early June, and these lands will be granted to you next. Next, each of you will draw lots to decide the land you cultivate. Then, Orlando read out the names one by one. First the freemen came forward to draw lots, followed by the serfs. As for the robber slaves, they did not have this treatment. As a group of dregs, they could only be squeezed dry and then disposed of. Wei Lin stood by and observed. It was simply a variety of life. The freemen or farmers who were drawn near the Praying Star Lake happily pressed their handprints on the contract documents. Those who were drawn to remote areas seemed to have lost half of their spirit and were listless. Those who were waiting were so excited that they could not bear it. Seeing the good land being taken away one by one, they were so anxious that they could not do anything. When everything was over, 163 contract documents were placed in front of Wei Lin, representing that 3,260 acres of land were granted, which also meant that he had 2,358 acres of tax land. As for the remaining robber slaves, they would be real slaves, working day and night in a designated area until the end of their lives. As soon as the free people and serfs got the land, they ran to their respective areas and wrote their names on the notice board. Varen asked Orlando to take the contract document back to his room, and then called Andrew, the deputy captain of the night guard, over. "My lord." As soon as the knight Andrew received the news, he hurried over. "How are you doing with the jicama seedlings I asked you to prepare?" "My lord, the preparations have been completed. According to your instructions, it is more than enough to plant 3,000 acres of farmland." "Well, that's good." Hearing that there were so many jicama seedlings, Wei Lin nodded with satisfaction. He planned to let freedmen and serfs plant 3,000 acres of beans and potatoes at the end of June, and harvest a batch of grain in September to increase his grain reserves for the coming year, which would make it easier for him to expand the population of his territory, but jicama can only be grown once in a while. The crop contains small amounts of toxins and causes serious damage to the land. A fertile field will become barren after several seasons of jicama. However, with rotational planting of soybeans, this problem will be solved. However, in this situation, obtaining food is the top priority. In the future, he plans to set up a special official position to educate farmers about this to avoid an irreversible decline in food production. "Tell Baird that I will go to the Kadlo Province for a while, and he will handle all the affairs in the territory." "Yes, Lord." After Andrew left, Varen returned to his room to prepare for tomorrow's trip. Window_Tabula equals window_Tabula_Tabula.push mode, thumbs, feed, 01, container, Tabula, below, article, thumbnail, 300x250, placement, below article thumbnail, 300x250, target_type, mix. Chapter 19, Trading Weapons, heading to the Slave Trade Center of Kadlo Province. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This time, he was going to Kadlo Province. He planned to visit cousin Brian first, buy some weapons, and then find ways to buy a group of slaves back. In fact, he prefers to recruit free people, but no fool would live outside the dangerous borders. However, this situation is not irreversible. That monster attack may be a good opportunity. In the early morning of June 8, Varen put on his clothes, took a carriage of food and 5 empty carriages, led Orlando, 4 knights and a group of soldiers, and headed towards the ridge more than 200 kilometers away. Baird looked at his master's leaving figure and felt that the burden on him was heavier again, but this was also an opportunity. The territory is in the early stages of development. The more he can show his value, the more important he will be in the Lord's heart, so that he will not be outcompeted by the guardian knight Orlando. In his stupidity, he also noticed some information from the past half-month. The Lord intended to train Orlando and recruited a lowly serf as a knight's attendant. This was a dangerous signal. During this period of time, we must not only manage the territory well, but also make the entire territory run efficiently. Baird clenched his fists and made up his mind that he would never be abandoned by his master. As a knight of commoner origin, he wanted to rise to the top, become a commander, become famous, return to his hometown, and trample on the ground those little nobles who looked down on him. In the Ridge Castle at Ridgeland, a butler entered Brian's room and reported respectfully, "Sir, Lord Varen is here." "Who are you talking about?" Brian stopped the pen in his hand and raised his head to look at the butler. "Sir, it's Lord Varen who visited you a month ago. He is waiting for you outside the castle with his convoy. He has been here for more than a month." Could it be that he encountered some kind of accident? Brian stood up and walked towards the castle gate, with a worried look on his face. When they were halfway there, the housekeeper looked at the worried master and explained, "Don't worry, master. I think that although Master Wayleen's number is small, they are all warriors. They are most likely here to buy weapons from us." "I hope so." When Brian heard this, he responded to the housekeeper and quickened his pace at the same time. "Cousin Brian, long time no see." Wayland watched a familiar person come out of the castle, took the initiative to greet him, and said to him with a smile, "Wayland, what's going on with you? Could it be that you encountered bandits and failed to develop? Why don't my cousin lend you some troops?" Brian saw that Wei Lin had blood stains on his body, and he brought fewer people than last time. There were a lot of people, plus more than 20 bandits tied up nearby. Thank you for your concern, cousin. These are the bloodstains of robbers. Don't worry. Wei Lin was a little touched by this honest cousin and responded with a smile, I came to visit you this time, but I brought you big business. After hearing that everything was fine, Brian was relieved and asked, business, you won't open up the situation in the toxic area so quickly. That is, with my ability, I occupied a territory in less than half a month. In front of his concerned relatives, Wei Lin couldn't help but show off his achievements. By the way, what business are you talking about? Brian asked after a brief conversation. That's it, cousin, Varen slowly told Brian what he needed to do, now I need slaves and weapons to prevent the monster from counterattacking. Well, weapons are easy to deal with. I still have more than 200 sets of leather armor and thousands of long swords that I can trade with you. At this point, Brian changed the subject and continued, as for slaves, to be honest my territory is lacking in population. If you need it, I can give you a few blacksmiths and 50 serfs, but I won't have more. Wei Lin heard this and said hurriedly, cousin, I accept your kindness. I am here mainly to be better able to trade weapons. As for slaves, I plan to buy them in the noble territories near the provincial capital. Okay, how many weapons do you need this time? 100 sets of leather armor and 300 long swords. How much do you think they cost? A set of leather armor costs 80 gold coins, and a long sword costs 30 gold coins. You want 100 sets of leather armor and 300 swords, for a total of 17,000 gold coins. Cousin, your price seems wrong. Why is it much lower than the market price? We are brothers, so we can use the market price to cheat you. Brian laughed and explained to Varen with sincerity on his face, Wei Lin knew very well, so he took out 17 gold tickets worth 1,000 gold coins from his arms, mixed with a letter, and handed them to his cousin. Brian didn't check it at all and just put it in his pocket. Afterwards, Varen temporarily placed 23 robber slaves in Brian's castle, waiting to be picked up along with their weapons when he returned. 11 days after leaving the Lake of Praying Stars, Varen arrived. At the noble territory in the surrounding areas of Kadlo Province, the territory closer to the provincial capital is safer and has a larger population. Correspondingly, the practice of selling slaves is also prevalent here. This time, the place Varen went to was a city called Bagamoyo. As a famous slave trading center in Kadlo Province, there were a large number of slaves here. Wei Lin plans to purchase a group of serfs from here to replenish the population of the territory. After placing the others outside the city, Varen led Orlando and 2 other knights into the slave city of Bagamoyo, perhaps to make customers feel comfortable. The environment in the city is much better than that in provincial cities. There are soldiers patrolling around to prevent riots. Sir, I am very familiar with Bagamoyo. Can I serve you? A boy of 13 or 14 came over, bowed and saluted, with longing in his eyes. Orlando, give him a silver coin. Wei Lin looked at the intricate streets, but he needed a guide. The young man looked at Orlando, who was about the same age as himself, with great envy. He took the silver coin respectfully and carefully put it into his pocket. Sir, I don't know where you are going. A place where strong slaves are sold. Wei Lin thought for a moment and then added, there should be a large number of people and a rich variety. After hearing this, the young man immediately replied with sincerity in his eyes, Sir, please come with me. Turning left and right, everyone followed the young man to a remote slave selling place. There was no one around, so Wei Lin frowned and said with dissatisfaction in his tone, Are you kidding me? Orlando, who was standing nearby, heard this, pulled out his knight's dagger, and put it on the young man's shoulder. The young man looked at the sharp dagger and read from the knight's eyes that if he didn't tell him the reason, his head would move in an instant. Sir, I didn't lie to you. The young man immediately knelt on the ground and explained very quickly, there are many types of slaves sold here. It was only because of the noble's troubles that this scene appeared. Go in and take a look. You can understand what the little one is saying. I hope you belong to me. otherwise I can only give 10 gold coins to the local nobles. As soon as Wei Lin finished speaking, he led people into the slave sale place. The young man watched the customers enter, came to the back of the Chamber of Commerce, and knocked on the door. After a while, a bag of coins was thrown out. The young man observed his surroundings keenly. When he saw that no one was around, he picked up the money bag, put it in his pocket, and disappeared into the street. Chapter 20 Hidden Dangers Eliminated Invisibly. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On the other side, as soon as Wei Lin entered the gate, a wealthy businessman came up to him. Sir, welcome to the Bashak Chamber of Commerce. I am Buck, the branch president of this Chamber of Commerce. What do you need? Wei Lin looked around and saw many strange races imprisoned in exquisite iron cages for display, including a few half-elves. He had to admire the courage of this businessman. I want strong slaves, blacksmiths, carpenters, masons. I even want architects. Buck's eyes lit up when he heard it, and he looked at Wei Lin more kindly. Sir, please rest assured, we have everything you want. The Bashak Chamber of Commerce doesn't have much else, but there are many slaves with craftsmanship. Sir, come this way, be careful of the threshold. Through the tunnel, we came to the basement where the slaves of the Bashak Chamber of Commerce were imprisoned. There were also patrolling thugs around, and judging from their strength, they were comparable to Orlando. Look, sir, the male slaves here have good teeth and are all 20 years old. They can work for you for another 30 years. Buck stepped forward, held the slave's chin, showed his teeth in front of Wei Lin, and tried his best to sell. How much is one? Sir, 20 gold coins each. If you want more people, I can give you a discount. Buck saw Wei Lin asking about the price and said hurriedly, fearing that the other party would regret it. Mr. Buck, I want to buy 300 strong slaves. How much do you need? 80% off. The original price is 6,000 gold coins, you only need 4,800 gold coins. Remember it, take me to see other skilled slaves. Okay, sir, please come this way. Seeing that the deal was reached, Buck's face was full of smiles, and he took Wei Lin to the next area. A blacksmith costs 80 gold coins, a carpenter costs 50 gold coins, and a bricklayer costs 30 gold coins. After Buck's round of sales, Wei Lin bought 10 blacksmiths, 15 carpenters, and 25 bricklayers. It cost 2,300 gold coins. In the end, Wei Lin spent another 1,000 gold coins to buy 111 to 12-year-old boys from Buck. Diehards need to be cultivated from childhood to shape their values, and these boys are just right. Buck, where is the architect I want? Take me to see. Wei Lin walked around and bought everything he should buy, and couldn't help asking Buck. The second stage is about the construction of his own castle. Without the architect's plan, he was really afraid that it would collapse halfway through the construction. Hearing Wei Lin's words, Buck showed an embarrassed expression. Sir, there is another architect slave in the Chamber of Commerce, but they are all expensive and are half-elf. Do you really want to buy it? Half-elf? It doesn't matter, as long as it can be used, I don't mind these. Wei Lin waved his hand, indicating that he didn't mind the race of the slaves at all, as long as they were useful. Seeing this, Buck led Wei Lin and others to the depths of the basement. Passing through a secret room, they came to a separate secret room. My lord, please look, this half-elf girl is an architect. She is proficient in all kinds of buildings and is good at building all kinds of castles. If you buy them all at once, we can also give you a special carriage. After hearing this, Wei Lin came to the iron cage and squatted down to look at the half-elf girl. She was very beautiful and he was a little moved. The half-elf girl's eyes revealed despair, and she didn't care about anything around her. Buck saw that Wei Lin didn't respond for a long time, and he was very anxious. Then he continued to sell. My lord, this is still a virgin. You can buy her as an architect or a prostitute. How much? 3,500 gold coins. You can take it away, and the Bashak Chamber of Commerce will give you a special carriage. Buck said hurriedly when he heard it. Okay, I bought it, and sent all the slaves I want out of the city. Wei Lin stood up and took out 11 gold notes worth 1,000 gold coins from his arms and handed them to Buck. looking at the glittering gold bill. Buck's eyes lit up. He took the bill respectfully, checked it carefully, and carefully put it in his pocket. "Here, sir, these are 4 gold bills of 100 gold coins. Please accept them." Then, Wei Lin took his men away from here. Walking on the road, Orlando suddenly asked, "Master, there is obviously something wrong with the Bashak Chamber of Commerce. Why do you still want to trade here? There should be no problem with the others." Wei Lin stopped and said to Orlando, "The problem should be the half-elf slave. I'm afraid the local nobles covet it." The two sides had a conflict because they didn't agree on the price. "After all, not everyone is as rich as you, Lord." Touching Orlando's golden hair, Wei Lin responded with a smile. "Yes, Lord, I understand." Outside the city of Bagamoyo, in a manor, Kazakh, the son of the governor of Kadlo Province, invited his friends to hold an open-air banquet. "Sir, I believe that in a few days, the Bashak Chamber of Commerce will deliver the half-elf woman to the door." "Ha ha ha." Kazakh raised his wine glass and smiled at a young nobleman beside him. "There is nothing that I, Kazakh, cannot get." When he thought that he could get a half-elf girl worth 3,500 gold coins without spending a penny, his heart was filled with excitement. At this time, the housekeeper of the manor came to Kazakh and reported in a low voice, "Master, the half-elf girl was bought by someone." Who bought it?" Kazakh held the wine glass tightly and asked fiercely. "It was a pioneer knight, it is said that." "What, a hound-like thing, dared to take my order, don't you want to live?" That without waiting for the butler to finish, Kazakh cursed, as if he was going to rush to get people to wipe out the other party. "Master, the other party is a member of the X family, we can't afford to offend him." The butler looked at Kazakh, who was about to leave, and hurriedly finished the rest of his words, fearing that he would cause trouble again. When he heard that the other party was the X family, Kazakh's heart immediately became empty, thinking back to more than a month ago. A member of the Eagle family came to the Kadlo province and killed a guard in front of his father. His father could only laugh it off and dared not pursue it. Afterwards, he was called to the study and severely warned not to conflict with the other party. Although their family is a count family, compared with the X family, it is the difference between a tiger and a mouse. In the kingdom, the count family and the earl family are not the same. The Eagle family is stronger than most marquis families. The Dosk family he belongs to is weaker, only slightly stronger than some newly promoted earl families. "Boss, the other party is so ignorant, how about I take people to get that half-elf girl back for you?" The noble young man on the side looked at Kazakh's ugly face and hurriedly expressed his opinion, ready to leave a deep impression on the boss.